Hey everyone, it's Joe from Scarecrow Studio. If you are returning to the channel, welcome back. And if it's your first time to the channel, welcome. And please consider subscribing. We will have more video tutorials on paper mache art, particularly in the Halloween theme. And today, basically, I wanted to show you my techniques on how to make jack-o'-lantern stems with paper mache. So what I have here is a few different examples. I've got some finished pieces, and I have some pieces that they're done. They just need to be painted, primered and painted and all that good stuff at this point. But these are basically two different types of stems that I'm going to show you and how I make them. So got this little curly stemmed guy right here. He's a happy little pumpkin. And then I have the basic short stem paper mache for the jack-o'-lantern sculpture as well. So this tutorial is going to go hand in hand with the paper mache jack-o'-lantern beginners tutorials. I think there was 3 or 4 of them that we have previously posted. One thing that we did not go into is stems. We didn't really go into how to make stems. I did a short little snippet on how to do a stem, but it wasn't very in depth, and so I've had some people ask me about stems and how I go about creating them, and so that's what I'm going to show you here today, as well as sharing a few tricks and tips that I've learned along the way, and we'll get to that later on. Alright, so first thing that you're gonna need to know is the materials. Today for the stems, I'm going to be basically using one type of cardboard tube. This is a thinner or skinnier cardboard tube, typically found in like aluminum foil wraps, food wraps, that kind of thing. They're sturdier. They're a lot stronger than a typical toilet paper cardboard tube or paper towel cardboard tube. You can use these. I've used them a lot. In fact, that's what I've used on this guy. I wanted him to have a thicker stem, and so I used this. But today we're going to be using this, and the process is going to be exactly the same, whether you choose to use one of these or if you want to use one of these. All right, so let's get more in depth on what else you're going to need here. You're going to need, for the curly stem, you're going to need some flexible or bendable wire. You can pick this up at any hardware store, pretty cheap. You're going to need some sort of craft foam. This is just a sheet of yellow craft foam. If you don't have the craft foam, don't worry about that, and I'll get into that in a second after we start actually putting the stem together. You're going to need a wire, some sort of a wire cutter to cut your bendable wire with. You will need a box cutter or some sort of blade or serrated knife to cut the hole into your pumpkin. You're going to need some sort of a piece of styrofoam. Now, I don't really care for styrofoam. To my knowledge, most styrofoams are not biodegradable, so they're not great for the environment. I typically try to choose things that are going to be better on the environment, which is, you know, one of the reasons why I've chose paper mache medium, because of a lot of the materials are recyclable and biodegradable and all that good stuff. Styrofoam isn't. So why am I using styrofoam? Well, this kind of stuff comes in all kinds of packing boxes. So you go to the store and you buy a microwave or you buy anything online, you know, they typically will use some sort of styrofoam to brace it from the exterior of the cardboard packaging, to keep it intact, to keep it from becoming damaged in the delivery or the handling or whatever. So you can, you know, a lot of people just throw this out. I hang on to it because, you know, I figured if it's not biodegradable, we can't really recycle this stuff. We might as well at least repurpose it. So I do use some of this stuff, and I repurpose it into art. And I'm going to show you how to do that, and what I use this for. Okay, what else are you going to need? You're going to need a pair of scissors to cut your styrofoam pieces. You'll need some kind of a marker. I have a green Sharpie here. And then you're going to have a hot glue gun and, of course, hot glue sticks. And as always, anytime I work with hot glue, I have my little container of cold water just in case I get some hot glue on my finger and I need to dip it in there real quick, and it saves a lot of pain. So I think I've covered all of that for the materials. So I'm going to go right into this and we'll start creating some stems. All right, everybody. So basically what I have here is I have a pumpkin form. This was made out of a plastic grocery bag, which I stuffed with newspaper and then strip mached that. This process I do cover again in the tutorial for paper mache jack-o'-lantern. Great tutorial for beginners. So we're going to go ahead and use this pumpkin form for our stems today. We're going to determine where we want to place our stem. Now, if you've noticed here, I have a little arrow. So that just indicates to me that I've looked at this pumpkin form, and this is eventually where I'm going to draw in my jack-o'-lantern face. I want this to be the face area. So at the top here, I'm going to determine where I want my stem. So at this point, I have determined I'm going to put my stem right smack in the middle. Normally that's where a stem will go, but hey, to each their own, and you can put your stem wherever you want. So I'm going to place that on top, and basically with my Sharpie, I'm just going to go ahead and go around here. All right. So now I know that that area right there is the perimeter of where I'm going to cut out that circle there. So that's what I'm going to do next, and I'm going to go ahead and use a box cutter for that, or a utility, I guess they're called utility knives. I'm not sure what they're called. Anyway, it's one of these things. I'm going to go ahead and use that to cut out the top where my stem is going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. If you've done a good job on your strip machining, which I hope that you have done, this is going to take some time and patience because it's very thick and it's a bit hard to cut through. If you have a Dremel tool, you can use that. That would cut through this a lot easier, but I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. And I'm going to be patient, and I'm going to take my time so that I don't have any accidents with this blade and cut my finger off. And I suggest that you do the same. Okay, so as you can see, I finally cut through the hole there. So I'm going to take my cardboard tube and I'm going to insert it in there. Now, it doesn't have to go down that far, guys, okay? I would say you want it maybe at least an inch, okay, to give it some support inside there. Because eventually we're gonna clay this over and it's gonna stay in there really nice. It won't just be hooked in there with hot glue. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that the circle that you draw around there, when you go to cut that out, cut it out a little bit wider than that actual mark that you made around there, because you're going to need to get that tube in there. You don't want it to be too tight so that you can't get it in there, and I'll show you what I mean by that in just a second, okay? So, but that's where we're at right now. We've got a cardboard tube in there. So basically I said about an inch, so I'm going to insert it about right there. I'm going to make a mark around the tube, and that's going to tell me how far I want the tube to be inserted when I go ahead and glue it. Alright, so that's my line for when I put this back in here and glue it. Now I need to determine how long I actually want my stem to protrude out from this opening. Now, because I'm going to make this a curly stem, I don't need it to be that long, because I just want it to be the base. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark it about right here. So I guess that's probably, what, another inch? Okay, we'll call that an inch. So I have my first mark. That's where the level of where I'm going to insert my stem inside. And then I have my second mark, which indicates how tall I actually want my stem. Now, if you wanted your stem taller, you're not doing a curly stem and you wanted a stem taller, then of course you would make the stem taller. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and use my utility blade, and I'm going to go ahead and cut right here. Don't discard that. That's the little cap that came from your pumpkin here. Don't discard that. You're going to need that. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take my blade and I'm going to just cut around that mark. Awesome. Alright, so now here's our stem. Now, if you're making a curly stem, you're going to need this to put, we're going to glue that onto the bottom, and we're going to insert it into the pumpkin. So that's what I'm going to do right now. But because this is quite thick, I'm going to go ahead and actually, I'm going to cut that in half with my X-Acto knife. Very carefully, I'm just going to cut that in half. This is going to allow me to show you the two different types of stems, because we're basically, I'm only showing you this on one type of jack-o'-lantern. So I'm going to go ahead at this point I'm going to take my hot glue gun. I'm going to healthy bead of hot glue around my cardboard tube. This is the end that's going to be inserted into the jack-o'-lantern. So it's the longer end. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick it onto the little cardboard portion of the cutout. We'll wait for that to set, and then we'll move on. Before I show you the curly stem version, I'm going to show you the regular stem version. Basically, you would take this cardboard tube, just the way we created it for the curly stem, and instead of inserting it this way, with the open end up, if you want just a straight stem, you would insert it with the open side down And basically all you do is you take your glue gun and you hot glue all around there. And that's as simple as it gets, guys. Now you would do the same thing if you're using one of these bigger cardboard tubes from a toilet paper roll or a paper towel roll. Concept is the same, okay? You would just have a bigger circle that you would use to top off or to cap off your stem. But that's as simple as it gets right there. So that's it. I mean, you glue around there, wait for it to set, and you've got your stem on there. Doesn't get any easier than that. Now, with this other version, this is where it's a little bit more complicated that I'm going to show you. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and squirt a little bit more hot glue around here because I want to make sure this is going to be on there pretty well. Right about like that. That should do it. We're going to wait for this to dry and then we'll insert it into our jack-o'-lantern. Okay, so at this point our glue has set. As you can see, that's on there pretty secure. It's not going anywhere. And now I'm going to go ahead and take my piece of styrofoam here. I've cut it so that it will fit inside of here, just like that. It doesn't have to go all the way up to the edge, but you want it to go up far enough so you can see how that looks. So that's the next step. You're going to go ahead and insert your styrofoam. And then at that point, we're going to go ahead and stick our stem inside here. Okay, so I'm having a little trouble getting that stem inside there because there's a bunch of hot glue around there. Don't worry about that if you can't get it in this way. Flip your pumpkin over and insert it through the inside. Just like that. Alright, now remember our mark, so that's how far we want our stem to go down into the jack-o'-lantern. And then we're just going to go ahead and hot glue around it. Before I do that, I do want to mention that this is the opportunity for you to make a choice whether you're doing just a regular stem or a curly stem. You can tilt your stem to one side or behind in the back or whatever. So go ahead, make sure you're going to position your stem the way that you want it to lean, if you want it to lean in any certain direction. When you're doing a curly stem, I don't really think it matters all that much. But when you're doing just the straight stem, if you want it to curve or something like that, then that's when you just kind of angle it before you glue it into place. For this tutorial, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it straight up. And I'm going to take my hot glue and give it a nice, healthy ring of hot glue all the way around. I want to make sure that it's going to be on there nice and secure, so that we can manipulate it without it falling through. So that's going to be real important. And as always, let that dry. It's going to take a few minutes for it to set. You don't want to start handling stuff that has fresh hot glue around it because it's dangerous and it hurts. So we're going to go ahead, give that a few minutes to set, and then we'll move on. Alright, so that hot glue is set. It's dried completely. It's not tacky at all. It's in there nice and firm, and that's what you want. So the next step is inserting a piece of this bendable wire inside there. So really what you want to do is kind of determine how big and curly you want your stem. So before you cut the piece, or before I cut the piece, I actually will insert it So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just inserting it into the middle of that styrofoam piece in there, all the way down till it touches the bottom. And I'm going to try to decide how long I want my stem. I think I'm going to go ahead and I'll cut it right about here. So I'm going to go ahead and take my wire cutters and I'm going to snip it right where I want the end of the stem to be. Get rid of that. Don't need that anymore. Don't need that anymore. I turned off my hot glue gun because we're done with the hot glue for this project, and I didn't even burn myself. Yay for Joe. Trust me, that's a rare occurrence when I don't burn myself. Hence the little cup of water. Alright, so next we're going to go ahead and start forming our stem using the foam here. Now, before I move on with the foam, if you don't have foam, this is just a piece of thin, flexible foam that you can buy in any kind of craft store or any kind of big box retail store in their art and craft section, and it's relatively cheap. But this is my preferred method or preferred material in constructing this type of stem. But if you don't happen to have this on hand, you can go ahead and use newspaper, and I'll show you that in just a second. Alright, so you take your newspaper. Best way I think to do it is to basically just kind of roll it up like that. And start forming it around your bendable wire. Oh, I always do this when I'm in the beginning of my tutorials. I always seem to forget one of the materials or supplies that you'll need. You will need some masking tape for this. So basically, once you have that on there, you take a few pieces of your masking tape, and you're just going to tape it all the way around. You're going to do the same with your newspaper all the way up and around your bendable wire, and that will create the form around your wire so that you could go ahead and apply your paper mache clay over it. Alright, so if you don't have the foam board, go ahead and use newspaper. It's not a big deal. Back to the foam board though. Foam board is basically the same kind of idea as the newspaper. I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to cut some strips. Actually, I think I'm going to cut it this way. I'm going to go ahead and cut a few strips of my foam board, get those ready. Enough that I think is going to cover my bendable wire. Let's see if 2 will do. Reposition this camera here. It's not easy trying to film these things alone. I am filming alone again. My sidekick, my partner in life in crime. Well, not in crime. At least not in crime, not yet. But my partner in life and in art, Yvette, is not here to help me film today. So I'm trying to do it solo again. So basically, as you can see, I'm taking it from the bottom, and I'm just creating circles around the bendable wire, starting from the stem area, just like that. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to cover that over with clay. It's probably best that you have some pieces of masking tape already cut, so that you're not doing what I'm doing and trying to hold it in place. So I'm going to go ahead and get a few pieces of masking tape. I'm just going to stick them there. All right, I'm probably going to need one more piece of this foam. We'll see. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to continue wrapping it around. If you want your stem to be a little thicker, go ahead and make it a little looser. But do keep in mind that your stem will get thicker as you're applying your paper mache clay. So don't worry so much about that. So I've got that up in the top there, holding that together. I'm going to come down here, put another piece of tape around here to hold that in place. And yeah, I'm going to need one more piece here. Not a big one. Go ahead and cut that like that. My masking tape. All right. I'm going to go ahead and continue wrapping it, wrapping it, wrapping it. There we go. Just like that. Easy peasy. All right, so that's basically holding that in place. Now, something that you need to know when using the foam board is that paper mache clay typically will not stick to this type of foam board or anything like that. But it will stick to the masking tape. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to make sure that I'm going to cover all of the pieces of the foam board here with masking tape, so that I can later on apply my clay over it and not have any issues with it sticking. All right. A little more on the very tip there, just like that. Flip it around, make sure I've got everything covered. There's a few pieces there. I'm going to go ahead and get those covered. So yeah, just make sure that you're using the foam board, and actually it's going to help you if you're doing this technique and you're not using the foam, the pieces of foam, you're using newspaper. Wrap that newspaper. You're going to need to secure it with the masking tape anyway, but I would go ahead and after you have your newspaper strips all the way around your stem, go ahead and cover the complete thing with masking tape as well. You don't have to do that with a newspaper if you're going to go ahead and strip mache it, okay? But by doing this, you can actually skip the strip mache portion of this, which is another reason why I like it, because the strip mache part of the paper mache process is my least favorite. You've heard me say that in other videos, and so I try to get around as much of that as possible. Now, when you're when you're forming your curly stem, you're going to notice that when you're manipulating it, you're going to need to apply some more masking tape around those areas where it came apart there. Not a big deal, just go ahead and do that. So at this point, you know, you can, because of that bendable wire in there, you can manipulate this and form this stem in any direction that you want. It could be like that. It could be, I mean, basically any way, any which way that you want. And you could just go ahead now at this point and apply your paper mache over it. So that's it, guys. Pretty simple, pretty basic. And eventually, after you clay that over, you'll have a curly stem, something like this, on this guy here. But that will be your end result for the curly stem. Alright guys, that's it today, my friends. Very basic tutorial, like I said, on pumpkin stems. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you know, I hope it was helpful. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, COVID-19, and I just really hope that you all are doing well, and I hope you all are healthy and staying safe out there. And keep making art, you know, make mistakes, learn from them, move on, do great things, you know, but keep creative, keep being creative, keep making art, and we're going to keep making tutorials. Sorry it's been a little while since the last one. We're still working on some other stuff right now for you, but we'll get that out there to you soon. We appreciate all of you viewing and that have subscribed, and for now, that's it, and catch you in the next one. Take care.